Hello and welcome to yet another episode of Eerie International, episode 461 this week. My name is David from the United States.
I'm Andi from Germany.
And I'm Dave from the UK.
And we are reunited this week to talk about a movie from New Zealand, Dead Alive or Braindead. I should have said Braindead first. Braindead or Dead Alive. Let's take two. We're going to keep it in. From 1992.
Editor Dave thanks you.
Zombie comedy splatter film directed by Peter Jackson. We'll get to that in a little bit. Welcome to the show. If this is your first time listening, we are a horror podcast that talks about horror stuff, whether it's video games, movies, podcasts, books, comics, whatever it is. If there's a horror tinge to it, we're going to investigate and check it out and talk about it. We're on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, if you want to leave us a comment or follow us, see what we're up to. We also have a Gmail account, eerieinternational@gmail.com. If you want to send us some longer form thoughts, we'll read those on the air. You can subscribe, rate, review, all that jazz that you do with podcasts. We are in the middle of our three-part sort of little series of episodes over the early horror splatter films of Peter Jackson. I say splatter. I don't know that The Frighteners is that splattery. Let's just say horror. Films of Peter Jackson before he went on to become a massive blockbuster filmmaker with the Lord of the Rings films. Last week we talked about Bad Taste. This week we're talking about Braindead. And next week we will close it out talking about The Frighteners. Before we do that, though, let's get into what we got into this week, and I'm going to throw it over to our friend from across the pond. Both of you are that. Dave from the UK. What'd you get into this week?
I actually got into almost nothing. So I'm going to take this time instead to mention the fact that we are now on YouTube. So the viewership has been very low, but I would completely expect that for a channel that was set up like several years ago and had one video on it and literally never posted again. The algorithm is punishing us very hard. But we are on YouTube. New episodes are going up within 24 hours of the podcast going up, if not earlier. It just depends on how much energy I have that day for getting everything done, because it's basically I'm having to do everything twice. But yeah, it's on YouTube. There are teething problems with the earlier episodes in terms of the visuals, where there are like gaps in the slideshow. I've addressed that with the latest episode that came out last week. So hopefully that's fixed going forward. But yeah, if you are the kind of person that likes to listen to your podcasts on the television in the background while you get on with something else, good news, you can listen to us on YouTube now. So yeah, check that out if you want to.
Hell yeah.
And that's literally it. I've done fuck all this week at all. I've watched Critical Role, but I'm not going to bore people with that again. So yeah, there we go.
Sounds good. Andi, what about you?
So, just a few things. You remember that last week I talked about the movie Deathstalker, that I had just watched the original Deathstalker from the 80s. And in that movie, of course, you have your protagonist, the title giving Deathstalker, but there's another guy in that movie, like a male sidekick adventurer that joins the party at some point. And seeing that guy, I thought, well, that guy is way more, I don't know, has way more charisma. That guy should be the lead. And at some point during a like big celebration scene in the throne room, he was swinging on the chandelier. And I thought, wow, that's great old-timey adventure stuff. And then in the end credits, I saw that he was also credited as a stunt coordinator, maybe only because he was swinging on that chandelier. I do not know. But then I looked him up. Guy's name was Richard Brooker. Died a couple of years ago. Was born in Germany. Was an English actor. And turns out he used to be a trapeze artist, which makes sense for him to swing on the chandelier then. But then looking into him further, I found out, oh, yeah, I've seen that face before. That guy was Jason in Friday the 13th, Part 3. He was the first Jason to wear the hockey mask.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that led me to a short documentary on YouTube called Friday the 13th Part 3, the Memoriam documentary. It's a fan-made documentary with interviews with people involved in the movie, history of the movie, and a longer section on Richard Brooker himself in that documentary as well. I don't quite remember how long it was, half an hour, something like that. Under an hour, definitely. I guess around about a half an hour.
That's awesome.
And one more thing about Richard Brooker, which is also very interesting. So he was a circus artist and became an actor, became a director and producer, worked on Bill Nye the Science Guy. And one very interesting fact, so this is straight from Wikipedia. Brooker had also patented a device that is used in mobile phone devices and in the movie industry, which led him to win the Primetime Emmy Award for Outstanding Achievement in Engineering Development in 2006.
What the fuck?
So sadly, as I said, he died at the age of 58. So he didn't live that long, sadly. I said died a couple of years ago, which is completely wrong. 2013 is when he died, not 23. So he's been dead 12 years. But what a life!
Also, what a yeah, absolutely, what a life. I'm not downplaying that at all. But also, like, on a small level, what an amazing story that this dude outshone the protagonist of a movie from 1983. I'm looking at here. And you noticed that and then looked him up and found out all of this stuff. Like, it's crazy that's how you came across all of this stuff, was that a stunt coordinator, second lead in an 83 Sword and Sorcery movie just was good enough that you then found out. Like, that's crazy. That's awesome.
Yeah, and I wanted to shine a light on the guy, and I'm sure there's other horror fans out there that are way more knowledgeable about the history of the Friday the 13th Part series, and they all know, of course, that's Richard Brooker, and of course he won that Emmy and was in Deathstalker. But yeah, so as I said, I saw that I don't know, what is it, 8 hour long or whatever Friday the 13th documentary. So I've definitely seen the guy, I've heard about the guy, but yeah, seeing him in Deathstalker, because I thought that he really made a great adventurer in that movie. I would have definitely liked him to be a lead in such a movie, and yeah, and that's why I looked him up. So anyway, that short documentary, Friday the 13th Part 3, the Memoriam documentary, you can find it on YouTube easily.
Nice.
Then,
that's awesome.
As David already mentioned, we're doing this 3-part series on Peter Jackson's movies. And then at some point I realized, okay, so we picked from his theatrical features, we picked movie 1, 3, and 5. So we're skipping 2 and 4. Yeah. And then I thought, okay, I'll make it a point to also watch 2 and 4, so that I will have watched all 5 chronologically.
Nice.
And those are the 5 before he did The Lord of the Rings. So I think it's a pretty nice section of his filmography. So we watched A Bad Taste for last week. Then I watched Meet the Feebles, and then of course Braindead. And Meet the Feebles is a movie that I had never seen. And if you might remember that I'm also doing this thing that I try to every month. Additionally to all the Eerie movies, I try to watch a movie from the 20th century I've never seen, and I try to rewatch just any movie. And I thought, okay, Meet the Feebles I've never seen. Heavenly Creatures I've seen many years ago, so those are my new watch and my rewatch for this month. So Meet the Feebles, most people will probably know, a puppet movie, basically a Muppet movie, a perverted version of the Muppets. It is about a variety show, a TV variety show that is filmed at a theater, performed at a theater. And sex, drugs, rock and roll, pornography, underground stuff, everything is in there. Big old machine gun massacre at the end, and everything performed with Muppets. So
is it a mixed thing like the Muppet Show, where humans show up and the puppets are independent, or is this a full puppet world?
This is a full puppet world. I think.
Got it.
I see. I had read the Wikipedia article. I think there's a Muppet character that is supposed to be a human. So most of them are just anthropomorphic animals. But there's also, I think, human characters, but they are also puppets. So there's no actual human visible in the film. And it is a watch. It's definitely worth watching. And it's so interesting that this was his second feature, and he made this crazy Muppet movie. So I do recommend it. It's definitely worth seeing. But it is what you probably would expect from Peter Jackson in that era in his filmmaking career, and a movie between Bad Taste and Braindead. It is definitely it fits between those movies, only that it's Muppets.
Nice.
And then yesterday we went to see Jurassic World Rebirth, the latest installment in the Jurassic Park, Jurassic World franchise, mostly because it's directed by Gareth Edwards. I like Gareth Edwards as a person and as a filmmaker, and I like Jurassic Park. And I was in the mood for a good old-fashioned Saturday night popcorn film cinema experience. And I like the movie. There's portions of it that I like more than others. There's some portions of it where I think this is some of the best we've ever seen in any Jurassic movie. And then, of course, I mean, everyone knows that, but I will still mention it. The first movie stands on its own. That is a masterpiece. Mm-hmm. Everyone knows that. No one argues that. No one says, well, actually, I like the third one best. No one. It's not like Alien and Aliens or Terminator and Terminator 2 or Nightmare on Elm Street 1 and 3. There's no debate about that in the Jurassic franchise. Yep. And I think you will also have to distinguish the Jurassic Park movies and the Jurassic World movies. Yep. I think those are also, you should view them separately. So Gareth Edwards tried to do, and he says that in interviews, he tried to do his best Steven Spielberg impression. He says, whenever you see my style in the movie, that's when I failed.
That's a funny quote.
I achieved my goal when it looks like Steven Spielberg, and when it looks like me, that's when I failed. And especially maybe the beginning, like 20 minutes or so, I really loved. The opening is a sick horror movie. The opening graphic and red and black when nice. the Chip Kid T-Rex dino logo comes up. It looks great. It looks really like it almost like Mandy.
That's awesome.
And then the segment after that, when Scarlett Johansson gets introduced, and the task, the adventure gets introduced, and then they go to meet Mahershala Ali. It looks great. I love the colors. It reminded me, especially when they go to the tropical regions where they then set off to the island to the colors, everything. It reminded me of Kong Skull Island. These bright oranges and things like that. So all the stuff I liked. At some point, another party gets introduced, and that's when the movie lost me a little bit. So we have these two parties that meet and then get separated again, and then meet again in the middle. And especially when they're separated, so there's this family, a dad with his two daughters and the older daughter's boyfriend. Whenever we were with them, I wasn't as invested, because they're just very passive characters. They don't really do much. They try to find a way and try not to be killed, but they don't really have anything adventurous going on for them. I really liked Mahershala Ali's and Scarlett Johansson's characters. I would have way more enjoyed spending more time with them, and they also have emotional moments together and emotional backgrounds, which could have probably could more to be done with. So and that's as that when that family showed up, that's when the movie started this split enjoyment for me. Whenever we're with the one party, I'm not as invested. When I'm with the other party, I am more invested, but then it goes back and forth. So I still think it's if you like those movies, I think it's worth watching. As I said, my main motivator was let's go see I knew the reactions weren't that great to the movie, so I tried to get myself in that headspace of, okay, let's make this a junk food movie experience. This is a big budget B movie with monsters. I don't expect too much of a story there. I just want to see some monsters, some action. I like Scarlett Johansson. This one will sound weird to you. I like her German voice. I really like the the voice actor that does her voice.
Nice.
And yeah, I got that at moments more, and then a little less. As at the beginning of the movie, I was really invested. I really enjoyed those first, whatever it is, 20 minutes or whatever. And then after that, it was okay, and yeah. You don't miss much if you haven't seen it, unless you're a Jurassic World completist. But it's also not a bad movie, I'd say. Other people disagree. As to expected, my Letterboxd people, they there's everything in there between a 0.5 star and a 4 star.
Oh wow.
I think the 0.5 star is Elio and the 4th star is Bela.
What a great extremes to use.
They say
Elio
great
Bella.
art divides people.
Yeah, I mean, I think, as I said, I believe it's Elio. Elio, if it's not you, I apologize, but I believe it's Elio, and I think he wrote something like, "This might be the worst movie I've ever seen."
Oh, that's strong.
I think that's a hard disagree. So,
Tell me you've never seen Meet the Spartans without telling me you've never seen Meet the Spartans. Good Lord.
All right. Yeah, that's it for me then.
Okay, cool. I got a few things. I'll run through them really fast. Dragon Ball Z: Wrath of the Dragon from 1995. Not a horror movie, but I did want to mention it because it is the first Dragon Ball Z thing I've watched with my son, where the antagonist of the film was not a fighter or an evolved fighter of some sort. It is a giant ass kaiju. So not a horror movie, but a pretty awesome. This is my favorite Dragon Ball Z movie we watched so far, for sure. I haven't watched all of them by any stretch. There's like 20 plus, but this one in particular I really liked because it's Goku, and this is post Majin Buu, if you know the arcs at all era. So you've got Goten and Trunks and Goku and older Gohan, all that stuff, busting into different Super Saiyan levels, but ultimately fighting a giant kaiju trying to take it down. So there's not like martial arts. It's more of a giant monster movie. Liked it a lot. I also watched Caught Stealing, which is not a horror movie. Liked it quite a bit as well. And then I read some books. I wanted to mention those really quickly. I started reading a book, and tell me if you've ever heard of this. It is a sort of sci-fi horror story. It's about an underground discovery that we find in caves and tunnel systems, in which there are a large amount of subterranean, alternatively evolved humanoid sort of creatures. So there's caving, these sorts of creatures, and the name of the project is The Descent. If you're thinking of the film, that's not what this is. This is a book that I came across from 1999 called The Descent by Jeff Long. It has a shockingly similar premise, at least on the surface, to the film The Descent, that what's his name made years later. Not David Slade. What's that motherfucker's name? Neil Marshall. Thank you. I called him a motherfucker just now. I like him. He also made a really bad Hellboy movie, so mixed feelings. This is a book I discovered on a Reddit thread, believe it or not. I was on the horror subreddit, and the subject of the post was something like, what's the single best horror novel you've ever read? And the original post, they said mine is The Descent by Jeff Long, and I'd never heard of that. So I looked it up right away, thought the same thing, was just like, this is fucking crazy. This is literally the plot of The Descent almost. It's called The Descent. It's, 15 years before the movie came out. What is this book? I'd never heard of it. And the rest of the post was other people throwing out, big titles like The Stand and stuff like that. And a couple other people also said like, oh yeah, shout out to The Descent. That's such a great book, but completely forgot about it, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, I'm really into it, man. It's like, it's very Crichton-y. I used to read a lot of Michael Crichton growing up. So, we just were talking about Jurassic Park, Sphere, Timeline, Prey, all these books that most of which got made into shitty movies. But in pretty much most cases, for me at least growing up, I loved his books. And that mixture of sort of like techno thriller, but definitely with sci-fi, fantasy, horror, whatever the other subgenre is that he was sort of blending into it was definitely present. And this is no exception. It's that same sort of era, same sort of vibe. It's a chunky little trade paperback, or not trade paperback, mass market paperback. So I'm like 100 pages in. I'm going to guess there's 600 or 700, maybe a little bit less. And it definitely has like so I haven't read this book, but there's a famous book. I want to say it's about mountaineering, climbing. It's outdoorsy shit called Into Thin Air by John Krakauer. You guys know this book?
No.
Or have ever heard of it? I know about it, I think, because it's such a massive book in that world. I've never read it. But anyway, that dude has a blurb on the cover of this book. So like you can tell based off of the blurbs, based off of other books that Jeff Long has written, that like this sort of thriller horror thing isn't normally what he does. But he's got a knack for it, man. I think part of it is just like his writing is strong and his attention to detail is really good. It jumps around a ton. So like the back synopsis of the book, it describes 3 or 4 different locations and discoveries that are made. Those happen in those first 100 pages. Like each chapter, you're jumping to a new place in the world, completely new characters, finding some sort of discovery, whether that's a like preserved sort of corpse with a lot of weird Clive Barkery shit carved into it in a cave, and then we jump to, you know, the Middle East, and there's like a mass grave that something is like nitrogen's coming out, like all this weird shit that you're just like, what is going on? But eventually, apparently, it does lead to them exploring caves and discovering this like vast network of, you know, alternatively evolved humans that have their own culture and everything. So I'm really into it so far. I'm digging it quite a bit. Moves quick, real snappy, but I wanted to throw it out there because I'd never ever heard of it, and it was just so crazy that it was so similar to to the premise of that movie. But yeah, I'll keep you guys posted as I get through it. The other thing that I read that I definitely wanted to mention, I brought it up a few weeks back, I think, because I was midway through it. A book called The Library at Mount Char. Wikipedia describes it as contemporary fantasy / horror, which I would say is pretty accurate. Scott Hawkins is the writer. This is one of the best fantasy books I've read in years. I thought this was fantastic on pretty much every level. It's tough because like the two things that you see people talk about it are the most are, and I think these are both completely accurate. I couldn't agree more. It's hard to describe because it's unlike anything else you've read in so many ways. And then the other thing that people always say about it is that it is so hard to put down. It's like a very compulsive sort of read. You're drawn in and you want to know what's going on, and both of those were absolutely true for me. The one comparison I've brought up to people is if you're familiar with Neil Gaiman's like adult fantasy, urban fantasy kind of stuff, The Sandman, American Gods, it has some of that same sort of vibe to where we're dealing with a fantasy world, but we are in our modern world, so modern technology, everything else. I also thought a lot about comic book writers, which this made sense later. I've read some interviews with Scott Hawkins, which after you've read the book, if you read it, which I recommend you do, highly recommend you read his interviews. His interviews are great. He's a great interviewer just in general, but then also he's done lots of pretty candid, in-depth conversations about why he hasn't done a book since this book. This is his first and only novel. He has other published books. They're like Linux manuals. He's like a tech guy. But as far as fiction goes, this is it. And he's been very candid about the struggles he's had in trying to write something else and, you know, just working through that process. But anyway, in one of those interviews, he mentioned Grant Morrison or Warren Ellis, I forget which. But either way, both of those I think would apply to where we're working with some like very big fantasy sci-fi sort of ideas, but funneled through a more modern lens, kind of. Again, like there are comparisons I can make with some of the characters in this book with the Endless from Sandman, but it's also nothing like it at the same time. It's one of those things that's tough to describe. If I had to give like a very basic pitch, I think the back of the book does a pretty good job, honestly. We're following mostly two main, like there's a lot of characters in it, but we're mostly following two. One is a normal guy named Steve, who is a plumber, and he gets kind of pulled into this situation by this woman named Carolyn, who's very eccentric, strange. She wears weird clothes. She talks in sort of strange languages. And I think the back of the book says something like, and she works in a library, and she works for a man who she calls her father with capital F, who may or may not be God. And that's kind of where the book starts, and then you get more information about what all that means. Man, I loved it. Like I at every point, every turn, every character, I was just enamored with the writing, with the world. It was also a book, the way that it's structured, that it I think very much will reward rereads. Like, this was one that as soon as it was done, I was like, shit, am I going to read this again now? Like, am I going to start it over right now? I don't know the last time I've done that with a book. I didn't, but I will be rereading it for sure, because I can't obviously explain that without spoiling it, but the way that it's structured, it's pretty awesome. Very much horror, very much fantasy. And yeah, comes with my, for sure, highest recommendation. I thought it was fantastic. I loved it. So The Library at Mount Char, highly recommended. I think pretty much everybody should check it out. It's it is violent in times. I wouldn't call it gratuitously so, but it is more. It can get kind of R-rated and hardcore. I mean, it's the blend of horror and fantasy. So I think that should probably be somewhat obvious. I think that's it for me this week. I did see another movie in the theaters, which I enjoyed, but we'll be talking about that later on, so I won't bring that up quite yet. All right, let's talk about what we got into, or not what we got into. Let's talk about our movie this week. Braindead, 1992. New Zealand zombie comedy splatter film directed by Peter Jackson. Written by Stephen Sinclair, Fran Walsh, and Jackson, based on an original story idea by Sinclair. Stars Timothy Balm, Diana Penelope, Peñalver. Man, I don't know how to... Elizabeth Moody. Let's keep going. Ian Walken. The plot follows Lionel, a young man living in South Wellington with his strict mother, Vera. After Lionel becomes romantically entangled with a girl named Paquita, Vera is bit by a hybrid rat-monkey creature and begins to transform into a zombie, while also infecting swaths of the city's populace. We mentioned on past episodes, it's become a huge cult film, as with all three of these to different degrees, but I think probably this one the most. Huge reputation as one of the most like gory, gross, splatstick kind of films of all time. Let's go around the circle here and talk about what we thought overall. I believe this is a rewatch, maybe for all of us. I'm not sure about Dave. So let's start with you, Dave. Is this your first time seeing it? What did you think of Braindead?
Yeah, it's my first time watching it, and I was very impressed from the off, especially coming from Bad Taste and then into this one, albeit we have skipped a movie in the Feebles. But I was just very, very impressed with the jump in terms of obvious budget. I wouldn't call it evolution or revolution, but no, probably evolution. I have to pick one of those words, otherwise I'm struggling to think of another one. But you can see that Jackson's directorial style is starting to mature, if that's the right word, and he's finding what works for him and what doesn't, and he's becoming a more words are hard, guys. He seems to be settling into a more traditional director rather than kind of an indie director that does a lot of weird stuff, and but not that's not a bad thing, because like he's still got a lot of very imaginative shots in the film. Special effects are very good. The sense of humor remains, which is definitely something that you want to see carried over from Bad Taste. Immediately disliked the mother, which you're absolutely supposed to. So props to the actress for doing such a great job of just being that kind of typical matriarchal, like overly helicopter parenty kind of character. Also, like I think that is it Timothy Balm that plays our lead Lionel? Yeah. He's excellent. Like the way that he evolves through the film from very timid, kind of like straight laces character into almost like an Ash character from The Evil Dead, except he's got both hands. Like walking in with this lawnmower just like ready to go, and like the backlighting in that shot was absolutely stunning as well. yeah, like I really enjoyed it, and I love to see the miniature work at the beginning of the movie with the trams. This is probably more on me for not paying super close attention, because there's one or two shots where he actually catches a ride on the tram, and they may have done that in a location that still has them, whereas the majority of the movie was shot elsewhere, perhaps.
Man, I thought this too. I didn't look this up, but I had the same. And Andi, you probably have a better eye than both of us for this kind of stuff, so chime in too. But I noticed that as well. I was like, man, these look like miniatures. And then later on, I was like, am I crazy? This guy got on
caught a ride on one of them. A lot of it was miniature work. I feel like that was possibly the only shot that was like a real physical prop, and maybe it was a prop, maybe it was just like a bus that was dressed to look like a tram, I don't know, but yeah, like that, I loved seeing that miniature work, and like you could tell they were like, yeah, people are going to know it's a miniature, but fuck it, like, you know, we're just setting the scene, we're setting a mood and a vibe, and yeah, just generally like the feeling that I had for Bad Taste, where it was like, I'm forgiving all of these kind of like, you know, shoddy things that I'm seeing, because there's a spirit of adventure in filmmaking that, you know, only a film that can be filmed over the weekends over 4 years can really engender. I feel like a lot of that spirit is still present in this movie, but there's an extra level of polish, which, you know, you obviously you love to and want to see from a filmmaker as they continue to make movies and pad out their resume. Yeah, really enjoyed it. This is one of those movies where you're familiar with certain things because pop culture being what it is, like the baby. I swear I've seen the scene in the park before where he's chasing after the baby and it's kind of been bounced from pillar to post. And what possessed him to take a zombie baby out for a walk, I don't know. But I'm glad they did, because it was a fun scene. But yeah, overall, really enjoyed it. It's definitely a case. I've settled on the fact this is definitely the right word for it. It's, you know, we're seeing the evolution of Jackson as a filmmaker and his maturation into the filmmaker that ended up being trusted with $1 billion franchise in the Lord of the Rings. And also, it's kind of cool to see that he was on Skull Island like decades before he returned to it in an official capacity. So yeah.
And also a cameo in King Kong from the Sumerian, what is it? Sumatran rat monkey.
Oh,
there's a not the monkey itself. I didn't look this up, but if I remember correctly, there's a shot where I think it's what's his name? Adrian Brody is like down underneath in like the cargo hold. And there's like crates and everything everywhere. And one of the crates has the Sumatran rat, like the same stuff from that's on.
Oh, nice.
Kind of like, well, no, I started to say it's kind of like the Ark of the Covenant and Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, but it's not like that, because I think in that they have it fucking literally like
they play the music and
like glint off of it.
Yeah.
It's a little less overt in King Kong.
Yeah, that's cool.
Sweet. All right, let's throw it over to. Well, I don't want to cut you off, Dave. Was that mostly it for your?
Yeah, that was it for
thoughts?
the initial kind of stuff. Yeah.
Andi, how did this hit you rewatching Braindead?
Yeah, so I had seen this once before, 30 years ago or so. So this is very similar to what I said last year about Bad Taste, about seeing this at a younger age when it still wasn't that old yet. The movie it was, but hard to get in Germany. I think you still cannot get an uncut version of it in Germany. And this one I watched with some friends. Someone had organized a tape from somewhere, and I don't quite remember if it was a dub, which it probably wasn't, because it probably wasn't available. So it probably was in English. But yeah, so you can hear me talking about that situation in a similar way about Bad Taste on last week's episode. So yeah, rewatch after 30 years or even a bit more. And I think this is one of the best horror comedies ever made. It's just fantastic. It's so much fun, but still so gory. Just fist punches through heads and heads severed in half, and so it goes all out on the nasty violence, on the gore, but it's always played with this humor. And there's something that I think we didn't talk about last week on Bad Taste, which I think also applies to Braindead. It's just the use of the music. And I don't mean the, like, not just listening to the score, but how the score is used in the film. So you can go either way on the music. In Braindead is very, very synthy, very simple in a way. Maybe not the kind of music that you would listen to if it wasn't in the movie. You probably wouldn't put on a vinyl of this necessarily in your home, but as a tool to strengthen the effect of the visuals of what's going on in the movie, of strengthening the mood, the comedy. It just works perfectly. And I think that's an element that is also very much there in Bad Taste, which to me makes, or is one of the elements that makes Bad Taste such a strong opener for this man's movie career, that it is so assured in also the use of music, apart from other things as well. And in Brain, it just works perfectly too. One fun fact that I wanted to bring up: this movie had its German premiere right here in this city that I live in, Nuremberg, Germany. Since 1990, there's this very, very small independent film festival called Weekend of Fear. So they mostly show horror movies, sci-fi movies, and things like that. I was a projectionist for them at 2 occasions. They've skipped around cinemas here in the region over the years, and for a while they were in my hometown of Erlangen at a cinema where I used to be a projectionist for 5 years. And during those 5 years, they held that festival at that cinema twice. So I at least partially worked at those festivals. Met Jörg Buttgereit there, for example. Made the infamous Necromantic movies, which you may have heard of.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, in 1992 here in Nuremberg, Peter Jackson was here in person to present Braindead at its German premiere at this very tiny local film festival. So that of course is a legendary fact for that festival, because they've had, of course, like all the quote unquote bigger German genre people like Uwe Boll and Olaf Ittenbach and Jörg Buttgereit. Some of them you know, some of you maybe don't. But Peter Jackson, of course, that is the big feather in the cap that he was here in 1992 with his third feature film, way before Lord of the Rings was even a thought on anyone's mind. I really enjoyed this movie. I watched it with Bianca. Bianca had seen it as well as a teenager, and I asked her how she felt about the movie, and then she said, "Yeah, well, she still enjoyed it. She thought it wasn't quite as effective as back then, and she had it in her memory. It used to be funnier and things like that. But then I also reminded her, well." And she said, "Yeah, but back then, of course, I was an edgy teenager where I probably just laughed at the violence." And then I reminded her, "Yeah, well, and back then you hadn't just seen everything yet."
Yeah,
this is one of the first movies that you ever saw that did something like that. That had this over-the-top violence, these great practical effects, and this type of comedy. It was not just about the fact that this is a movie that you're not supposed to see because it's banned in Germany and it's so over the top and you're in your teenager phase. No, this is just the case where you've seen all the movies that were influenced by this one, and but back then it was special seeing something like this, and that is where this cult status, of course, comes from, because this was people who don't watch horror movies talked about that movie back then. Though I think those friends that I watched that movie with back then, they probably don't watch horror movies today, and back then they didn't really on the regular watch horror movies. They were not that into movies at all. They just watched movies occasionally, and this was something very special that somehow got onto people's radars, and someone was able to organize a tape and So I think sometimes we need to remind ourselves of when did these movies come out. If we think, well, this isn't that great. Again, going back to a few podcasts that I listened to with Gareth Edwards this week, when he talked about when he saw Kubrick's 2001 for the first time, and he was this huge Star Wars fan and science fiction fan, and then at some point as a teenager he finally saw 2001 and thought, yeah, well, it's all right. I don't quite get why people rave about it that much. And then but he went back to it, he rewatched it, and at some point he realized, yeah, okay, this was the first one to do this shit. I grew up with all the movies that ripped this thing off and that were influenced by this, and that's what I kind of expected 2001 to be also, but of course it isn't. And it started this whole thing, and Braindead is that kind of movie for some of us, I think. So great movie. If you still have not seen this one, I don't know how easy it is to get a hold of in some countries, but I think this is one that people should really watch. It's just so much fun. How do you feel, David?
Totally agree. This, I mean, I mentioned last week the Desperado El Mariachi of it all, and for me personally, and that definitely was cemented even more so. I hadn't seen this since probably college, it definitely was that experience again where it's just, I think to keep that metaphor, that comparison going, similarly to Desperado, there's just cool shit happening all the time. Like it's just nonstop. I mean, even when the movie slows down, there's funny moments or gags or camera work or even like audio sort of like gags. There's the whole sequence where she's in the other room and he accidentally turns the radio on and he's fighting with his mom and there's sound effects coming, or there's noises happening from him, but she thinks it's sound effects from the radio show. Like there's, even in those moments, there's always this stuff happening. There's that same sort of spirit. So it took some adjustment, like I mentioned last week, going back to Bad Taste, because you can feel that same spirit and sense of energy, maybe even more energy in some ways, but significantly less money. So you have to kind of sort of keep that in mind in context and everything else when you're watching them kind of backward in that order, at least how it was for me. So this is how I wasn't expecting Bad Taste to be like this, but this was my only point of reference for the over the top, more transgressive Peter Jackson stuff. I'd seen The Frighteners, but that came obviously a little bit later, and so I was expecting something along the lines of this movie. Really like Bad Taste now. I have appreciation for it after last week and being able to separate it. This pretty much hit every single positive memory and experience I had, and then honestly probably added new ones watching it now at age 36. It's weird you said that about 2001, because I think about that kind of stuff all the time with it's hard to say movies like this, movies like Braindead and 2001: A Space Odyssey, where Taxi Driver was the one for me where when I was growing up, where I saw it after I had seen and loved all these movies that were inspired and influenced by Taxi Driver. And so for me, there was that first sort of initial thing of like, this is what everybody's like. I've seen this movie, and having to kind of remind myself and remember, like, this is the first one that did it. It was weird with 2001. It's like you either have to watch it right away and have that be the precedent that's setting, or you have to wait. For me, it was like I had to then wait 20 years to watch it, because then being able to remember all that stuff is there, but then also enough time went by. And I had a similar experience with Braindead, where watching certain sequences, shots, moments, whatever, in 2025, it makes it even more impressive, because you're like, how the fuck did they do this back then? Like it not only does it still look great, but I don't even know how they pulled this off and what it was that they did, because there's no CG, there's not any of that stuff now that you would fall on. So Braindead is that way for me. It's just bursting with creativity, man. I mean, every single, I can't reiterate that aspect of it enough, especially in the last, I think, third of it. But honestly throughout, but especially in the last third, once they break out of the basement.
Oh,
it is just
creature designs that they come up with.
Oh man. And kills, like it's it's one of those things that now with smaller budget horror, especially slashers, especially, you know, creature features, stuff like this, where if you're a fan of that subgenre, odds are you're going into it hoping, praying, crossing your fingers that you'll get some cool kills, that there will be some moments, whether maybe it's a Saw movie, a Final Destination movie, like there are sort of those aspects that it's like, oh man, they had like 2 or 3 amazing kills in this movie. Like that has become kind of a rubric at times. It's so crazy watching Braindead because there's a cool, unique, like tailor-made fucking bespoke makeup effect kill for one person that you see in that one shot, and then that's it. And there's like fucking 50 of those throughout the movie, like where it's just a shocking, either it's shocking, it's funny, it's both, sort of thing where it's like, no, this wasn't just that they had all of these masks, or that they had all of the same mask, or they had all the same sort of effect, and they just took it to an extreme. It is that, but everything, again, is so like custom made to the, and beyond just like the kill being cool, because so many of them are, because of the zombie movie and because of the nature of the infection, they almost never like permanently stay dead. So each time they get some sort of new kill, it then alters their entire makeup, like both in terms of their body and then also the practical makeup effects. And then they're that new form of zombie in the movie. So like the one dude in the cemetery, I think his name's Void, like the lead gang member guy. He gets like his like chest cavity like shredded over the thing, which then for the rest of the movie he has these exposed ribs. Then he gets cut in half at one point, then part of him gets flushed down the toilet. Like all of these things keep happening and keep going, and each one of those things is another makeup effect, another practical effect, where you're just like, the amount of work, amount of design, the amount of prep, like it's crazy. Honestly, like it's one of those things that's just kind of, from a practical like horror special effects perspective, it's I think mind-blowing that this movie exists in the way that it does. And then yeah, I mean, to reiterate everything else that you guys said, totally agree. I think the music's a huge part of it. There's this like piano music that plays in different parts that has this like weird incongruous tone that's happening because he's fucking football punting a baby or whatever it is. I like the amount of character that they're still able to give everyone, which is honestly pretty shocking for a movie like this. Like, A, you arguably don't even need it, but then B, it's one of those things that just kind of enhances everything, but at the same time, it doesn't ground it too much. I don't know. Movies like this are always impressive to me because when you have tonal shifts, or when you have multiple tones and you have to balance them, like it's so impressive to me. There's the sequence where one of my favorites in the movie, where the priest kicks ass for the Lord in the graveyard. I
was just thinking about that.
There's just like a straight up like kung fu sequence in the middle of the movie, very reminiscent. It's or at least it doesn't look like it, but it made me think of The Fight and They Live right away, where it's just like, oh shit, we're having a fight scene in the middle of the movie all of a sudden. That sequence, that entire thing, from him saying "I kick ass for the Lord," and then fighting all those dudes. I almost just videoed my screen to send it to my family group, like my dad and my sisters and stuff, who are not horror fans, and in fact like would be put off by a lot of violence or whatever. But the tone of it was so specific, even though he's ripping dudes' arms off and there's arterial spray and everything else, that I knew. And the only reason I stopped was because I was just like, I want to keep watching the movie. But like, I could have sent it to them and had no problems. Like, even though there's all this gore in it, because even in that short little segment, you're able to, I don't know, it's like the first time you watch Rocky Horror or something. It's like these projects that have this tone to them that everyone has the same sort of reaction at first, which is, unless they absolutely hate it, obviously. But even if they're not horror fans, like you were mentioning earlier, Andi, like getting pulled into this of like, oh, I can laugh at this. Like, I see why this is funny, or I can enjoy this in the same way that everyone else is enjoying it. Because most movies, it would be one or the other. It'd be very binary in terms of how they're handling that tone. And this movie, from beginning to end, yeah, just is able to juggle that so expertly. I think the lead is great. He wasn't in a lot of other stuff. He was a lead in another film that Jackson was involved with that I think Fran Walsh either wrote or directed, so I forget. I didn't look up all the details of it, but I thought he was great in this. He has the same sort of like kind of plucky Ash Campbell Evil Dead sort of vibe where like you have to be Ash Campbell, Bruce Campbell, Ash, what's his name? Williams? I forget his last name.
I forget.
Bruce Campbell's Ash. Like to where it's this like kind of like handsome guy, but also not a traditional like leading action sort of star, and has to have a lot of very reactive facial expressions to things that are going on, and be willing to be the butt of the joke, be willing to have these sort of like Three Stooges slapsticky sort of moments where he's going to look stupid and silly, but then still be endearing enough that you kind of want this relationship to work, and you kind of think it's cute that they have this and that they're romantically entangled, and they keep using that phrase. And so yeah, all thumbs up for me on this one. I mean, it's a cult classic for a reason. I think it's well deserves that status, but then I think on top of that, it's just genuinely really well made. And Andi mentioned this earlier. I did want to throw out there really quickly. I think we said this last week as well. We watched the 97-minute cut, which I did more research last night in the differences. And for the most part, if you're watching they call it the unrated cut, so the 97-minute unrated cut, which is what they released in the U.S. under Dead Alive. There were multiple cuts they released in the U.S. Under the name Dead Alive, one of which was like edited down for TV, has like or maybe it was edited down to an R-rated cut, and it has a lot of the gore taken out and like the lawnmower stuff and all that. And then there's even more cuts that are like for TV that are even more broken down. But as far as what's not easily available, but you can get a hold of it, whether it's on Blu-ray or DVD. I had the DVD. It's 97 minutes long. There's a 104-minute version that's out there that you can find on YouTube, etc., which has kind of been put together from the original cut. But honestly, the original like 104-minute and the 97-minute that we watched, violence-wise, there's not a whole lot of difference. I think most of the stuff that's different in terms of the duration is dialogue and like character development stuff. So yeah, we didn't really miss a whole lot of gore. I think there's like a couple jokes that are cut, and then when the baby first shows up, there's a shot of the baby's like umbilical cord getting caught on a nail or something. It's like that's not in the cut we saw, but I mean it's so minor. And if you do want to watch it and you're curious how to, so I thought I would just watch my DVD that I've had since high school, which is what I started to do. Then I pulled up just to kind of see comparison. How does this look on YouTube? The version on YouTube looked significantly better than the DVD. So I'm assuming that maybe they pulled it from the Blu-ray that came out later, which is now impossible to buy unless you're willing to spend a lot of money. And so, yeah. So if you go on YouTube and find a 97-minute cut and it looks pretty good, then you're all set. Until Peter Jackson releases the supposedly complete and ready to be released 4K remasters of these three films. Oh, not Frighteners, but Feebles, this one, and Bad Taste. That'll be your best bet. So yeah, just wanted to clarify that. Yeah, that was all of my overall main thoughts. I'm slowly accepting and transitioning my head to calling this movie Braindead. This was one that weirdly for me growing up, the alternate US title was the only one I ever saw. Like the poster, the poster, and I don't know if they used this poster overseas, but the one in the US was the one with the woman's face and she's screaming and there's like a little skull inside of her mouth, which was a pretty famous image growing up. I remember seeing that in video stores and stuff like that. But yeah, it's usually we bring this up on the show every once in a while because we're international podcasts and we have different titles. But this one was very, very aggressively called Dead Alive in America the entire time. In fact, I think the cut I watched still was called Dead Alive. Yeah, so big fan.
Yeah,
Go on,
Andi.
you already mentioned the lead and how especially the role reminds one of Bruce Campbell's performance in the Evil Dead movies, which I completely agree with. But I also want to throw out two names that the guy reminded me of. He was kind of a blend of Sholto Copley and David Tennant.
Oh yeah,
And
Yeah, I can see that.
you could. I think you could put both these guys in that role, and it would also work.
Yep.
No, for sure, for sure.
I thought, for some reason, I think maybe because of the bodies in the basement, I thought a few times of the Fright Night remake, which also has David Tennant. That's why I bring it up.
Sure.
Yeah. And I'm trying to remember if there were any other, I don't think there was anyone else I recognized in this. There's some cameos. Forrest J. Ackerman's at the zoo. I mean, I didn't recognize him. I just knew that from the article. Peter Jackson's got a cameo, but the rest of the cast, from what I remember clicking on a button, especially last week and then kind of doing this now, I'm always looking for names I might recognize that he brought back for Lord of the Rings or later films. The actress who played Vera, Elizabeth Moody, she was one of those. So she played Lobelia Sackville Baggins in the extended version of The Fellowship of the Ring. So I was able to work with her again. And I think she was also in Heavenly Creatures, which I have not seen. I know of it, obviously, but so yeah, this was still pretty early on, at least in like the local crowd, the New Zealand crowd. It seems like
that. I want to just go back to that fight scene in the graveyard, because honestly, like, I was not expecting it, and it's such a weird tonal shift for like 2 seconds to suddenly have this priest just kung fu kicking everybody in the face. But I thought about it and I was like, he came across as a very angry priest throughout the entire time that he was on screen. And now I understand why, because he's basically just a frustrated pit fighter. Who found God and is kind of lamenting the fact that he doesn't get to kick ass for God quite as often as he would like.
He dedicated his heart and mind to the Lord, but his body to martial arts. And the tear that's happening, the internal tug of war.
And like, he doesn't seem to give a damn that they're zombies or whatever. He's just like, oh, there's people who need their asses kicked for the Lord, and off he goes, And then like that, when the head that kind of it falls down, it bites him on the shoulder, and then he gets kind of like flapjacked onto a statue of someone, I don't know, striking a Michael Jackson pose, I guess.
The finger up in the air.
Yeah. And like there was this beautiful kind of like icky, sticky, I don't know how to describe it, but it doesn't look like something that a normal human body would produce when it was pierced by a statue. But like almost like an ectoplasmy kind of like texture to the gore that was sticking up out of his stomach. I don't know why, but it just took my attention. I was like, oh, that's a fun effect. Like, it doesn't look super realistic, but I kind of dig that, because like, we're in on the joke. Like, we know none of this is real. It's a movie, so we can make allowances for that shit. And also, a priest beating the shit out of a couple of zombies using his kung fu skills. That not exactly realistic either. So like, we're already all in on like buying into this story. But yeah, like that scene really popped me. Like, I was enjoying it already, but when that happened, I was like, oh fuck yeah, okay, now I'm into it, like, big time. Also, like when Peter Jackson turns up on screen, I was waiting for him to pop up on screen, because he's known for having almost like a Hitchcockian love of casting himself in small roles in movies. Although with Hitchcock, it was more like, I'm walking across the screen now. Ha ha ha. Whereas with Jackson, he actually takes on roles. He plays characters. I wasn't aware of just how deep it went. Like, I went to Peter Jackson's Wikipedia page and had a look at his filmography. And it underneath that, in one of these sections, it has acting roles. And like, almost every single movie that he's directed, he has had a role in. Like Bad Taste, Feebles, Braindead, Heavenly Creatures, The Frighteners, or most, if not all, of the Lord of the Rings films, either as a live action character or as a painting on a wall. He was in King Kong.
I remember a couple of them in Lord of the Rings. I remember one in The Hobbit. specifically in one of the 3 Hobbit movies. And then, King Kong, I think he's like a fighter pilot at the end. You notice very quickly that it's Peter Jackson in a
one of the gunners in the iconic biplane scene. He's in Hot Fuzz as well, which I didn't realize.
Oh shit, yeah, he's Father Christmas.
Like I'm going to have to rewatch that film now because I'd never realized that he was thieving Father Christmas. So that's something I'm going to have to revisit. But yeah, like I wasn't aware until we saw these earlier films that he was so fond of getting on screen in his films and other people's films occasionally, as Hot Fuzz has showed us. But yeah,
I was going to say he also seems like the kind of guy that if you are an Edgar Wright or one of these, pupils of his filmography, that you would want to have a cameo in your film for sure. There's so much like. I keep bringing up Edgar Wright, it seems like, last week and then again this week, but same thing. Like I don't know that I would in the past have pointed directly to each of them linking as directly, like, because the styles are different. But for whatever reason, last week and this week, especially both times or for both films, I've been like, man, Edgar Wright. Like I see so much of Peter Jackson stuff in Edgar Wright now that I'm really kind of probably just that same thing where it's like now I've seen. Almost all of Edgar Wright's movies and all of Peter Jackson's, and there's been more time to process and everything. So then hindsight becomes more closer to 2020 to be able to make those connections. But for whatever reason, the one I thought about a lot the moment that I thought about it a lot is when I think it's the housekeeper, or not the housekeeper, the like nurse, after his mom officially like kind of turns. He kills her, he like slashes her, almost cuts her head off, and then her head like flips upside down backwards like a Pez dispenser. But then it's another one of those like transformative zombie sort of things. So then for the rest of the movie, she has like two forms where she can flip her head back and then walk around backwards, viewing things upside down. Again, another moment, perfect example. We get a shot that's just her POV and the camera is turned upside down. Costs nothing, as far as I know. Like no special effects needed, but just that is the mode you're in. Like that's the level of creativity, productivity, inventiveness, like all of that shit mixed together that you are in Peter Jackson and company's headspace in every frame of this movie. That's what's so, I think, impressive to me. Sorry, Chris Farley showed and went off on a tangent, but
you're good, man.
It's just so exciting to watch something that's sustained to that quality for that long. It's mind blowing. I keep using that phrase too, but
there's a lot of prosthetic work, and I don't know if you call it a prosthetic because it's not actually on a person's body, but like there's that scene near the end with the lawnmower where there's like a skull that's been decapitated from the jaw line up. So and the head kind of skids across the floor. So I don't know. I guess it would be like model work or something like that. It's not really a prosthetic, but like between that, which looked like super good, but bearing in mind this is a $3 million movie. Like I didn't know what the budget for the movie was at the time.
30 years ago, like and there's a similar shot when I think that same head gets put in a blender, and I'm just looking at it like, how the fuck did they do this? It looks so good. Like it looks like half a dude's head in a blender.
It does.
And there's no like easy way. A lot of times, especially older shots, like I saw a cool, I think it was like Bloody Disgusting or somebody posted this morning I saw it this morning on Instagram. It was a Kill from Wrong Turn 2. Which is the one that Joe Lynch directed. And it's a wide shot of a guy with an axe walking up to a girl, raising the axe above his head, bringing it straight down like to the top of her head. And then before the impact happens, the shot changes. It cuts to her basically like from her calves down. And you see like all of this gore, intestines, all this shit fall onto the ground. And then her legs like kind of move apart. So you can it looks great. It looks fantastic. It's a great like practical effect, but you can tell right away what happened without seeing the impact, that he cut her in half vertically. But then also, if you're just kind of paying attention to how the shot's constructed, you can tell, oh, that's actually a pretty awesome and smart way to do it. All they needed was 2 fake legs because then they can prop them up, put all the shit above it, drop it into frame, make the legs split apart. Like you can kind of tell how they did it. So a lot of times in older films, I'm not bagging on Alien whatsoever. God damn it. I watched the first 2 episodes of Alien Earth and forgot to bring that up in the intro. Anyway, I'll talk about it next week. In the original Alien, the chest burster scene with Professor Broom on the table in the kitchen and everything, it looks great, but especially you can kind of piece together like he's under the table. Like they've shot it in a way to where they can do that. I don't fucking know how they did that blender thing with half a head. Like that's the kind of thing in this movie that's so exciting to me, because I'm sure there's answers out there, but the inventiveness of this film and films like this, Bad Taste again, like other movies that we bring up, Evil Dead, that's part of what I think it makes me just get so fired up watching them, because it is that level of creativity that I think only comes with this unique combo of untapped talent, or talent that's, really finally has found an outlet to kind of get out, and then limitations. And once you have those limitations in place, it can lead to so many of these amazing things. I have to shut the fuck up.
No, you're good, man. I will say, because I know there's at least one person who's listening to this and thinking this. $3 million went an awful lot further 30 odd years ago. Sure. So like, obviously, that is something to concede. But even so, $3 million budget for a movie, even back in like 92, I feel like this movie uses every single cent of that.
Totally.
Another effect that I wanted to bring up that we've not mentioned yet.
Well, this set, just to nail onto that point, before I move away from it, at least on Wikipedia, it says that they intentionally shot on Super 16 instead of 35 millimeter, specifically so they could use more money on effects. So to your point, I think that was the mentality.
And it looks great for something that's like, because everybody is like, 35 mil or like 70 mil if you want to be a Quentin Tarantino, like, purist. And I've got nothing against people that want to see movies on 70 mil, by the way. It's just, I'm just mentioning different film types that I'm aware of, because I'm a fucking pleb. Yeah. But like 16 mil is not something that I know of a lot of movies. Like I'm a pleb. I don't know what any film would be shot on back when film was used exclusively, before the digital age. Now it's all kind of, red cameras and stuff like that. So, but like for a 16 mil film, like I think if everybody could make 16 mil film look this good, nobody would bother using 35 mil. And I know there are reasons why people would. So, don't email us about that. I get it. But still, like, all I'm trying to impress is, like, this movie looks very, very good. Like, if you said to me, this was shot on standard 35mm film, I would have been like, yep, okay. Because genuinely, it just does look really good. And I'm sure that there's a lot of people out there that can point to things that denote, no, this is 16mm, because look at this, look at that, look at, I don't know, like the color saturation or something. I don't know. Like, I'm not an expert. I'm just someone that sits down, watches a movie, and goes, "Ooh, pretty." But on the subject of pretty, another special effect that we didn't mention yet, which I absolutely wanted to bring up, is light bulb head girl. That effect, holy shit! Like, and specifically, one moment when the light goes off for a second, and she goes from just being this face with like 3 glowing holes to looking almost lifelike again. And then the light turns back on. And I'm like, did they superimpose her face like over the film? Or was the model just that good looking that they were able to figure out a way that when they turned the brightness of the light all the way up, it was able to look the way it did when it was lit. But when they turned it off, it just looked like a woman's face, like a genuine woman's face. Because honestly, like, that fucking thing, I had to pause and rewind and rewatch it, because I was blown away with I couldn't tell how they did it. And that for me is always like the mark of like a fantastic special effect, because as far as I know, they killed a bitch and put a bulb in her head. And you know what I mean? And I don't mean to be derogatory or, like anything like that.
Oh, there's so many things like that in the movie where it's just like, I guess they killed somebody.
Yeah.
And in New Zealand in 91, you could do that if you had the film commission's backing.
For this budget, they were just like, okay, just buy a license to kill and then we'll get going on this shit. Like, honestly, that effect just blew my fucking mind. It blew my balls
it's great.
off. Yeah.
It looks fantastic. It's funny. It's kind of scary looking.
They do so much with it. Like when he gets
and they
his
keep it
foot
there
looped
too.
He gets his foot looped around the electrical cable in the loft, so it plays into the plot because then he falls through the ceiling and light bulb head girl is about to go after his girlfriend. No, that's it. That's her name now. I'm sorry. And then like just through like a moment of Deus Ex Machina or whatever, like she not only gets pulled back to the wall, but then proceeds to get pulled up the wall as he falls down the other side. It's just on the creativity, like you were saying earlier, like the creativity and just the sense of adventure in this movie. The way that these set pieces work, it's just so beautifully funny, but also like you can see how it works and why it works. And then there are aspects of it that I've got no idea how they fucking did it. And that's the beauty of cinema, because sometimes it's nice to know how the sausage is made. Sometimes I just want to sit back and be like, fuck, I've got no idea how they did that, short of literally sticking a light bulb in someone's head and then like pulling her up a wall.
Inflating it.
Yeah. Like, what the fuck?
So many, I started to take notes, and then I'm glad I didn't, because I was like, this is just a Chris Farley show-esque thing where I'm just going to be like, and then this part's awesome. But I mean, I think in some ways that's kind of how the movie like this is, because it's, you don't have time to register or talk about or be like, that was crazy, because it's happening, especially in the last third, so quickly. So it does come down to like you and your friends outside the theater after the movie being like, holy shit, when this thing happened, like I was losing it. Like
my
that,
favorite films are when I can
of,
have that conversation afterwards.
Yeah, that kind of like fun. There, two of the ones that I love the most in the movie. One of them is very shocking and violent, and would have had a lot of like, or it looks like it would have needed a lot of planning and execution in the prosthetics. There's a part, it's early on in the attack. I rewound it a few times and almost sent you guys just a little clip of it because I knew I'd be bringing it up on the show, where it's one of the first girls get killed after they break out of the basement. So it's during the party scene, and a woman gets, I forget how the first woman dies. She's a brunette, and I only remember that because it cuts to the blonde. But the brunette, she gets like her head ripped off or something, and it cuts to this blonde woman screaming. It's so fast. It like cuts to her. She's screaming, and then a dude's hand explodes out of her mouth. Toward the camera. And it's to me, it's almost like a perfect microcosm 3-4 second version of the whole movie, because it is very shocking. It is very violent, but it's also pretty funny because of how it happens and how, and that's how most of the film, especially in the last third, is. There's really, they don't really give you a lot of time to breathe or reset. It's just like, here's a crazy kill that's either going to make you go ugh or make you laugh or both. And then when that kill is done, someone slips on some of the blood and is in pain. Like, it's just, it leads into the next thing. The other one that I love and it could not be more opposite in terms of execution, cost, everything else, is when they're stuck in that little room. It's his girlfriend and the girl that she saves, almost fucking kills, stabs in the closet. And a bunch of the zombies break in, and she drops all of the laundry on their heads, like the hanging clothes, and it just tangles them up. And it's like, those two moments for me are this movie, where there's very basic, slapsticky, funny stuff that is cheap and is just great for this sort of little moment, and then you've got someone with a light bulb inflated head and limbs going into blenders, and babies getting punted, and just all kind. I mean, we haven't even talked about the fact that at the end his mom turns into a giant ass monster, like just a Dark Souls-esque sort of creature that he has to fight at the end. And that's another thing with the script that's kind of crazy, is like they've also figured out a way to insert a metaphor theme about breaking free from trauma with your parent and how they raised you. Like, it's a little dramatic in that his mom like killed this mistress that was his dad was cheating on, like all this stuff, whatever. But, and even more so dramatic that she has the corpse of the lady in her attic in a box. But it's, again, like just constantly at every turn doing work that they didn't have to do, that they, we would praise movies for in this day and age for doing a tenth of what they did here, because either it's impractical or expensive or or whatever else. But yeah, it's just, I think part of the reason I can't shut the fuck up is because movies like this, I think, are so rare in so many ways that I can't not be just excited when I come across one like this.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's just nothing else really like it. There's so many things that have copied it and have been great at being inspired by it. Movies that I love, and I'm not shitting on those things for being, derivative of this. But that's kind of the nature of the game. If something hits and then has this sort of impact, and also, time has done a lot for it, becoming a cult film and becoming so, I think, influential. And like you said, Andi, I think it definitely made an impact when it came out. But I think time's probably only helped it in a lot of ways.
Well, because critically it did really well, but at the box office, like, it just fell on its face, which a lot of cult classics tend to do, and it's sad that they kind of have to wait so long to get the financial recognition that the critics gave it at the time, because obviously, like, the home video releases and stuff are going to make money back on it. I don't know if they would make,
or just interesting when stuff hits and people just don't know what to make of it. Like, they don't really know how to.
A little bit ahead of its time.
The one that in the horror world that gets and the one in the horror world that gets brought up a lot is The Thing, like, both financially and critically. Like, when it came out, kind of no one gave a shit about it, and that obviously has made a massive change over the years.
Probably the type of movie that is just super influential to young filmmakers. So people who saw it at the time, that you may know that old saying about the Velvet Underground, that I don't know the number, but it always goes like this: that the first album, only like 1,000 people bought that first album, but every one of those went on and formed a band. Movies like this is probably not many people saw it, but those who saw it were so super influenced by it that
it's got to be.
It probably spawned a few filmmakers.
That has to be really gratifying as well, especially like if you're Peter Jackson and like a filmmaker. Like, I mean, I don't know if Edgar Wright might have seen this and it kind of influenced him in some way, which might explain like how he ends up in Hot Fuzz like years and years and years later. But it must be gratifying that like Jackson probably every now and then either gets an email or will see something in the press where someone's doing an interview and it's like, I watched Braindead when I was a kid and it absolutely influenced me into, becoming a filmmaker and doing this and this is what it influenced in this film. Or, someone brings out a horror movie and they're like, oh, I wanted to do like a little visual tribute to Braindead or Bad Taste or, anything like that. Like, a film that doesn't do well financially, as you said, Andi, like, still can have a wonderful back end to it, like a legacy that, and in the best possible world, which this isn't in a lot of cases, but certainly for this movie it seems to be, you get both, where it's an influence on people and then it makes its money back in the home video and whatnot eventually. But I want to, in the spirit of the coming out of a movie and just talking about all your favorite bits, I want to go back to the kill that you mentioned, David, with the woman, the blonde that gets the hand rammed through her face, because for me that was super impressive. But again, like, the thing that I was just like, I'm not entirely sure how they did this. I've got two ideas. I'm trying to talk over the dog. Apologies.
Well, I know what you mean though, because I thought the same thing. I wondered if they had to have. I don't know. My guess is that it had to have been some expert editing between
that for that bit. Absolutely.
Yeah, because it doesn't look like there's a transition between the real person screaming and then an entire arm coming out of her mouth. Which, unless they killed someone,
maybe
I'm assuming is not real.
Maybe. What I wonder though is that the part directly after that, where that zombie just starts waving his arm around randomly and she's just attached and just kind of like ragdolling. And I'm like, is that a full body mannequin that they've got his arm through? Or is it a woman who has got a prosthetic arm in her mouth
around her face,
that is ragdolling herself in time with the guy who's standing behind her with his shoulder against her or something? Kind of.
That would be my guess.
Yeah.
I love But I love shit like that. I've brought it up on the show. One of my favorites ever is in Mission Impossible 3, which J.J. Abrams directed.
Yeah.
And there's a shot where they have to get Ethan Hunt, whatever. They are putting a gun up his nose, I think, and it like shoots a tracker thing up into his up through his nasal cavity, like up kind of into his brain. Doesn't kill him. It's just a tracker. And in the movie, they have to have this big burly guy jam it up his nostril and pull the thing while Ethan Hunt's kind of grabbing the guy's arms to try to fight him off and stop him. But every single it has to look real. It has to get up against the nose. The stunt guy that was holding the gun was obviously worried. It's hard to gauge and time that. So finally, what Abrams had Tom Cruise do was use his other hand to hold his own arm because it's coming out of the bottom of the frame. So he's holding his own hand fighting against himself. Like shit like that. So simple, but also just like we mentioned last week with the Planet of the Apes one, like just so, I don't know, creatively inspiring, fun. It just, that sort of thing happening on that level. It's still sometimes the simplest, weird way of doing it works the best. You just have to kind of think around that instead of trying to throw money at the problem.
Yeah.
That's my take.
Just special effects in this are so special. Like, genuinely, I could probably go on for hours just talking about each and every one of these effects. It's mad.
They're great.
Some
stop motion in it too, which is always fun.
Yeah. They really just they touch every base. There's stop motion. There's miniature work. There's like splatter and gore. There's prosthetics out the wazoo. There's full body mannequins. I imagine the embalming scene. There isn't an actress inside of that. Well, maybe she's laying underneath something that's doing all the work, but like there's all of those kind of bulges and stuff. And then the moment where, so I'll get to what that moment was, but the guy that's in charge of the embalming, he says, full facial fracture or something like that. Like there's a term he uses, which immediately sets the tone and kind of lays out the fact that in this world he's had this happen before, and because there's a term for it, and like the fact that he so deftly puts a finger on each eye and then just whacks the top of his hand with his other one just to get the eyes to go back in. Like this dude's had to do this more than once, like, and I love the fact that like there's this level of ineptitude that has been built into this universe where it's like, how many times are you going to leave the embalming machine on without supervising it, you dumbass? It's just, that's world building that doesn't need to be there, but they threw it in there because it was a fun joke, and why not? Like I love that.
Do we have any other big I mean, I think we pretty much at the end where we can do double feature picks, but I don't want to cut anybody off.
No, I mean, I could.
You guys got anything?
I'm
in the same place you are.
Yeah, to borrow a phrase from you, David, I could farley over this for hours. So, big thoughts, no. Little thoughts that are not really all that important or interesting, loads. But yeah, we'll leave it there for me. What about you, Andy?
I'm good, and I think David has to go.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, it's fine. I'm not trying to rush us, but yeah, all good. Okay, double feature picks. Andi, what you got?
When Sam Raimi went back to his roots and made Drag Me to Hell, this was like kind of that movie that I was finally able to see at a cinema that had a proper release during my lifetime when I was able to go such a thing, and it had that vibe of those early 80s practical effects horror movies with over the top goo and gore, and yeah. So we did an episode of over Drag Me to Hell years ago, and I really enjoyed that movie. So yeah, Drag Me to Hell is my pick to pair with Braindead.
Nice. Normally I throw it to Dave, but I'm going to go next just because we have another Sam Raimi double feature pick, because I'm going with Evil Dead. Another movie that hit me in the same... I thought at one point, I've told the story on the podcast a million times, but the first time I ever saw Evil Dead was at a friend's house overnight in Brazil, and everybody was asleep. The TV was on mute, and I was seeing shots from Evil Dead. Just had no idea what it was, but was captivated by how it looked. And I had that same sort of thought watching Braindead. last night, which was just like, man, this movie, this entire story that I've had about Evil Dead my whole life could have easily have been Braindead if it was just that movie playing that night instead of the Evil Dead on Brazilian local TV. Some 20 plus years ago. But yeah, similar thing. Even down to a shot of a vine going up a leg in Evil Dead. And in this movie having like is it an intestine or something? I forget what it is that's going up his leg.
I think so. Yeah.
A very similar way made me think of it. So I'll go with Evil Dead. What about you, Dave?
Okay. I can't believe this. Like, genuinely, we're going 3 for 3 here.
Okay.
So I was going to go with Evil Dead 2.
I almost was picked that too.
Yeah, but I've actually ended up going for Evil Dead Army of Darkness because literally it's an army of zombies. So, like, you get
it's weird how all three of them would work in different ways, even though it's the same franchise. But yeah, it is. I think it's the blending of genres.
I think Evil Dead 2, because like I mentioned earlier, how the main character Lionel kind of gave me Ash vibes. Especially with the lawnmower. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that actually, like, as far as like a pairing is concerned, I would want to go with something that had a lot of zombies in it. And
stop motion.
And stop motion as well, yeah. So it's certainly not the best Evil Dead movie. But as a double feature pick, for me, I think this one probably works the best for me. So, yeah, it's
best
a
Army of
3 for 3.
Darkness movie.
It's absolutely true.
It's
the
not
best
called
Army
Evil
of
Dead.
Darkness movie. So you get it on a technicality. All right, cool. Listeners, let us know what you thought of Braindead or Dead Alive, depending on where you live and where you're located. Send us some longer form thoughts if you so dare at eerieinternational@gmail.com. Next week, we'll be talking about The Frighteners, Peter Jackson's final horror movie of his filmography thus far, starring Michael J. Fox. Excited to talk about that. Haven't seen that since college either, so it'd be cool to revisit it. In the meantime, stay safe out there. Keep watching horror movies, and we will see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.